My brother slept with my girlfriend 26 years ago. My family forced me to forgive him for my daughter's wedding. But when I discovered his real motive, I exposed them all, and they never saw coming what happened next. I'm 46 years old, work for a logistics company, and for the past 3 months or so, I haven't been sleeping well because my daughter put me in a situation that basically reopened the biggest wound of my life. I guess to understand why I'm like this, I have to tell you about my brother Tyler and what happened 26 years ago, when I was 20 and he was 22, and how that shit never really got resolved. I just buried it real deep until Audrey decided to dig it up in the worst possible way. Look, I come from a normal family. I mean, nothing special. My parents, Albert and Shirley, were always those people who believe family is the most important thing, that blood can't be broken. All that traditional stuff they drill into you since you're a kid. Tyler and I were close when we were children. You know, we played together, had each other's backs at school, that kind of thing. He was the older one, so supposedly he was supposed to be the responsible one, but he was always kind of selfish, honestly. I don't know if I saw it at the time because he was my brother and I loved him, but looking back, there were signs. You know what I mean? Like he always had to be the center of attention, always needed to win, and if I liked something, somehow he had to have it too. When I was 20 years old, I was dating Andrea. We'd been together for like a year and a half, almost 2, and I was in love. Like really in love, in that intense way that happens when you're young and you think that person is your future. We lived in the same town, everyone knew everyone, and she got along well with my family because she was always at my house. Tyler was there too, obviously, because he still lived with my parents while he finished some technical course that he never completed. And I was working at a warehouse at that time, long shifts. Sometimes I'd get out around 10 or 11 at night. And Andrea said she'd stay at my house watching movies with my family while I got back, because her apartment was far away, and she didn't like being alone. The thing is, that for like 3 months, I noticed Andrea was acting weird, distant. You know, like when someone is there physically but mentally they're somewhere else. When I'd ask her what was wrong, she'd say nothing. That she was stressed about college, that her parents were fighting. She always had an excuse. And I believed her, because why wouldn't I? She was my girlfriend. Tyler was my brother. My 2 favorite people in the world besides my parents. It never crossed my mind that something could be going on between them. Not in a million years. Until one day I got home early from work because the boss let us leave early. It was like 7 inches the evening, and I went straight to my house. I went in, and the house felt weird, like really quiet, and I heard noises upstairs. I went up the stairs thinking maybe Andrea was watching TV in my parents' room or something, because they had a better TV. And when I opened Tyler's bedroom door, I found them together in bed. And when I say together, I mean obviously what they were doing. No need to go into details because we all know what that means. I don't know how to describe what I felt in that moment. It was like someone had emptied me out from the inside, you know? I stood there in the doorway and they went pale. Andrea immediately started crying and saying, "Sorry, sorry, sorry," like that word could change anything. And Tyler, my brother, the guy who was supposedly supposed to look out for me, just sat there on the bed not saying anything at first. Then he tried to explain, said it had happened without them planning it, that they'd connected emotionally first, all that garbage people say when they want to justify the unjustifiable. I didn't say anything. I literally couldn't speak. I turned around, went down the stairs, grabbed my car keys and left. I drove for hours with no destination, crying like an idiot, hitting the steering wheel, screaming alone in the car. I ended up in a supermarket parking lot. Around midnight, called a friend, told him everything, and stayed at his place that night because I couldn't go back to mine. The following days were hell. Andrea called me like 500 times. Tyler, too. My parents found out and asked me to come home to talk. I went, but only to tell them I didn't want to know anything about Tyler ever again. My parents tried to mediate, you know, with that whole thing about how we're family, that everyone makes mistakes, that Tyler was sorry, and maybe he was, I don't know. I didn't care. What I cared about was that my brother, the guy who was supposed to look out for me, had slept with my girlfriend in his own house while I was working to save money so I could move in with her. That was the reality. I broke up with Andrea completely, obviously. She tried to apologize. said that Tyler and she had really fallen in love, as if that made everything okay. I told her I didn't care, that I didn't want to see her again, and I followed through. I blocked her, deleted her from everything, and moved on as best I could. With Tyler, it was different because we lived in the same town. We had the same parents. But basically, I stopped existing for him, and he stopped existing for me. If I was at a family gathering and he showed up, I'd leave. If my parents tried to force a conversation between us, I'd cut it off and flat out refused. The worst part is that Tyler and Andrea ended up getting married like a year and a half after all this. My parents went to the wedding, my aunts and uncles too, basically the whole family except me. They called me on the phone that day, tried to convince me to go, said it was important for family unity. I told them to choose. Either I went to future family gatherings or Tyler did, but the two of us together never. And you know what? They chose Tyler almost always. Not everyone, but most. Albert and Shirley, my parents, always tried to include both of us, but I refused. So over time, the gatherings split into version with Tyler and version with me, and the version with Tyler always had more people because apparently it was easier to forgive the traitor than to respect the betrayed. Years went by. I met other people, had other relationships. I married Pamela when I was 24. We had Audrey a year later. That marriage lasted like 8 years before we got divorced, but that was amicable. It just didn't work out. We grew in different directions. You know how it is. Audrey stayed mainly with me because Pamela got a job in another state and decided it was better for the girl to have stability. I agreed. I loved having my daughter with me, and Pamela visited her every 2 months or during vacations. During all this time, Tyler existed somewhere in my city, but not in my life. I know he had kids, too, I think, because my mother mentioned it to me once, trying to get me to care. I didn't care. I know he stayed married to Andrea, that he worked in something related to technology, but all that information came to me second or third hand, and I actively ignored it. For me, it was like Tyler had died 26 years ago. That was easier to process than accepting that my brother had betrayed me in that way, and the family expected me to just get over it. Fast forward to like 6 months ago. Audrey is 21 years old. She's in her last year of college, and she met this guy at university. They fell in love, and she tells me they're getting married. I was happy for her. Obviously, the guy seemed good. He had plans, he treated her well, everything a father wants. We started planning the wedding. I told her I'd pay for everything because she's my only daughter and I wanted to give her the wedding she dreamed of, within reason, of course. We're not millionaires, but I had savings. One day, Audrey comes to my house. I was with my current girlfriend, Valerie. The two of them get along well. And Audrey sits on the couch with that face people make when they're going to say something they know you're not going to. And she says, "Dad, I need to talk to you about the guest list." I said okay, thinking maybe she wanted to invite more friends or something. And she says, "I want to invite Uncle Tyler and his family." My heart sank. I told her no. Flat out no. I didn't even consider it. I explained the whole story to her again, even though she knew it. I told her how I felt. I told her that Tyler wasn't part of my life and that he wasn't going to be at her wedding, that she had to choose. Audrey started crying, said she understood my pain, but that 26 years had passed, that Tyler was her uncle, that she'd maintained contact with him through her grandparents, and that her cousins were going to be there, that she wanted to have all her family on the most important day of her life. I stood firm. I told her that if Tyler went, I wasn't going and I wasn't paying for the wedding either. Valerie tried to calm me down, said maybe I was being too drastic, but I didn't budge. 26 years doesn't change anything. Betrayal is still betrayal, and I wasn't going to share space with that guy, not even for my daughter. I know it sounds horrible to say it like that, but those were my boundaries and I needed them to be respected. Audrey left crying. The following days were horrible. She wouldn't answer my calls. My parents called me to tell me I was being ridiculous, that I was ruining my daughter's special moment over an old grudge. Valerie was also worried, told me she understood my position, but that maybe I should find a way to coexist for one day. But I couldn't, you know what I mean? It wasn't just pride. It was that seeing Tyler would take me back to that moment at his bedroom door. I'd see Andrea next to him, and all that pain I'd buried would come back all at once. After like 2 weeks, Audrey called me and said we needed to talk in person. I thought she was going to tell me she'd uninvited Tyler, but when she got to my house, she came with someone else. And guess who it was? Tyler was there, standing at the entrance of my house with Andrea waiting in the car. Audrey had organized an ambush, basically, to force a reconciliation. I got furious. I told Audrey how could she think of doing that I'd been very clear about my boundaries, and Tyler tried to talk, said something like, "Vincent, please, just give me 5 minutes. We need to resolve this." And I yelled at him to get off my property, that I had nothing to talk to him about, that for me he'd been dead for 26 years and that's how it was going to stay. Audrey was crying. Valerie came out of the house to see what was happening, and I basically threw Tyler out of my house while Audrey screamed that I was stubborn and selfish. Tyler left, but before leaving he told me he was sorry, that he'd been an idiot, that he understood my anger but that more than 2 decades had passed and that maybe it was time to let go. I told him he didn't decide when I let go of my pain, and I closed the door. Andrea didn't even get out of the car. I just saw her face looking from the window, and honestly, I felt nothing seeing her. Like really nothing. She was part of a dead past for me. The following days were even worse. My parents called me to tell me I'd been cruel to Tyler, that he'd made the effort to come to my house, and I hadn't even given him the chance to talk. Pamela, my ex-wife and Audrey's mother, also called me from where she lived to tell me I was being immature and that I was putting Audrey in an impossible position. Everyone was telling me to forgive, to move on. That resentment only hurt me. All that self-help garbage people say when they don't understand what it's like to be betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you. But you know what? I also got support. Valerie told me she had my back, even though she thought maybe I could be less extreme in my position. Some friends told me I had a right to my boundaries, and that family doesn't get an automatic pass to do whatever they want, and that gave me a bit of strength to stay firm, because I was starting to doubt, you know what I mean? I was starting to think that maybe everyone was right and I was the problem. A week later, Audrey came alone to my house. She looked tired. She'd been crying a lot from what you could tell. She sat down and apologized to me for the ambush, said it had been a bad idea, but that she was desperate because she wanted everyone at her wedding. I told her I understood but that I couldn't give in on this, that it was too much for me, and she, crying, told me she'd made a decision. Tyler wasn't going to go to the wedding. That she chose to have me there because I was her father, and I'd always been there. And that even though it hurt her not to have her uncle and cousins, she chose me. I felt relieved but also guilty, because I saw how much it hurt her to have to choose, but I thanked her and told her I was going to do everything possible to make her wedding perfect. We started replanning everything. She was calmer, although sad, and I thought that finally everything had been resolved in the best possible way given the circumstances. But the story doesn't end there, obviously, because if it ended there, I wouldn't be here telling it. Turns out that like 2 weeks before the wedding, Audrey received a message from one of her cousins, Tyler's oldest son, telling her that his dad was very grateful that he'd finally managed to reconcile with his brother, and that it meant a lot to him because his own son was getting married in a few months, and he wanted his brother to be there, and that this reconciliation with Vincent would help him improve his image with his own son, who apparently was distant from Tyler for other reasons. I mean, wait, let me explain this properly because it's important. Tyler hadn't tried to reconcile with me because he really felt sorry or because he cared about our relationship. He'd done it because his own son was upset with him about something. I don't know exactly what, but apparently Tyler had screwed something up in his family life too, and the son had told him he didn't want him at his wedding. So Tyler thought that if he managed to reconcile with me, he could use it as an example with his son that people can forgive and move on. Basically, he was going to use my forgiveness as a tool of emotional manipulation with his own son. Audrey called me crying when she found out about this. She was furious, like more furious than I'd ever seen her. She told me the whole story and apologized for having doubted me, for having tried to force the reconciliation. I was angry too, but more than anything, I felt validated. You know what I mean? For weeks, everyone had told me I was the problem, that I was the stubborn one, that I was the one who couldn't let go. And it turns out Tyler was still the same selfish manipulator as always. Just now, with 26 more years of practice, Audrey decided to confront Tyler. She didn't ask my permission. She just did it. She went to his house with Andrea there, told them exactly what she thought of them, told them they were manipulators and that it had been a mistake trying to include them in her life. Tyler tried to deny it at first, but then admitted that yes, part of his motivation was to improve things with his own son, but that he also really wanted to fix things with me. Audrey didn't believe him, told him he was a liar, and that she didn't want to see him again. And then Audrey did something I didn't expect. She recorded parts of that conversation, edited it, and uploaded it to her social media explaining the whole situation. Like she made it go viral, honestly. She talked about the original betrayal from 26 years ago, about how the family had pressured me to forgive, about the ambush at my house, and about Tyler's real motive for wanting to reconcile. The video got thousands of views in 2 days. People commented saying, "I was right to maintain my boundaries." Others said, 26 years is a long time. It was a whole debate on the internet. My parents were furious with Audrey for making a family matter public. Tyler called her, crying, saying she'd ruined his life, that people at his work were judging him, that his son was now angrier with him than before. And you know what? I didn't feel even a bit of pity. Maybe that makes me a bad person. I don't know. But after 26 years of being the villain in this story, I felt like finally someone saw things as they really were. Audrey's wedding was like a month ago. It was beautiful. She looked incredible. Her husband treated her with so much love that even I cried a little during the ceremony, although I wouldn't tell anyone that. Tyler obviously wasn't there. Andrea wasn't either. Their kids weren't either, although Audrey had considered inviting her cousins because they weren't to blame for having Tyler as a father. In the end, she decided it was simpler not to invite them to avoid drama. My parents did go to the wedding, but they barely spoke to me. You could tell they were upset with me and Audrey about how things had turned out. Some aunts and uncles and cousins were also weird, like they made passive-aggressive comments about how important forgiveness and family are. But there were others, especially Audrey's friends and some younger cousins, who told me they'd seen the video and that they respected that I'd stood firm on my boundaries. Valerie was amazing through all this, honestly. She supported me without judging, listened to me when I needed to vent, told me when she thought maybe I was being too hard, but never forced me to do anything I didn't want to. Audrey and she also became closer, which makes me happy because the two most important people in my current life get along well. Like a week ago, I had a long conversation with my mother. I told her I understood that she loved both of us, Tyler and me, but that I needed her to understand that Tyler had hurt me in a way that doesn't get erased with time, that it's not that I can't forgive, but that there's nothing to forgive because what he did is unforgivable, at least not for me. She cried, said she hated that her family was broken, but finally said she respected my decision, even though she didn't share it. I guess that's the best I can hope for right now. Honestly, I don't know if I did right or wrong in all this. There are days when I think maybe I should have been more flexible, that maybe 26 years is enough time and I should have given Tyler a chance. But then I remember why he tried to reconcile. I remember his face when I threw him out of my house. I remember the 26 years of divided Christmases and lost birthdays, and I know that standing firm was the right thing for me, even if not everyone understands it. Audrey told me the other day that she was proud of me for not giving in, that I taught her it's okay to have boundaries even with family, especially with family. That made me feel better. Because during all this time I worried I was setting a bad example, teaching her to be resentful or inflexible. But she sees it differently. She sees it as strength and self-respect, and maybe she's right. I don't know what's going to happen with Tyler. Supposedly things with his son got worse after Audrey's video, but that's information that comes to me filtered, and I don't know how true it is. Part of me feels something similar to sadness about that, but I can't say it's my problem. He made decisions 26 years ago that destroyed our relationship, and he made decisions a few months ago that confirmed he hadn't really changed. The consequences of those decisions are his, not mine. Valerie and I are good. Audrey is happy in her marriage. Work is still work. Life goes on, I guess. There's still tension with some family members. There probably will be for a long time, but I can live with that. What I couldn't live with was pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Forcing a smile and sharing a table with someone who betrayed me in the worst possible way. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if Tyler hadn't done what he did. If Andrea and I had stayed together. If my family would be complete now. But those thoughts don't lead anywhere good, you know what I mean? I can't change the past. I can only decide how I respond to the present, and my response was to stand firm on my boundaries even when everyone told me I was wrong. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't, but they were my boundaries and my decision, and at the end of the day, that's the only thing I can control.